Hello, family and friends. Coffee with Cody here. We're looking at our sixth video in the series. I'm going to do part two of the work video. Before I address that video, a couple of things we want to talk about. I got a little feedback. Somebody said that you're doing just fine telling your story and keep it up. I hope that in putting all these videos out, the platforms that I usually send them to are TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And some of you are following it in different places. I truly appreciate all of the support that I've been shown with the subscriptions, the views, the thumbs up. Heck, I'll even satisfy myself with some thumbs down. I know I'm not perfect, but we'll give it a go. If you'll recall, last week I talked a little bit about mostly growing up in the world of work from the farm and in town. I want to pick up with the work and basically focus on myself and the areas of work that I've been involved in. In reflecting, I thought back on all the things that I've done in my life, and man, it's been quite a few. So I'd like to share those with you and maybe a few stories about some of it, and hopefully you'll enjoy it and learn a little bit more about me, some of the things that you didn't know. You'll also note that I spent a lot of time talking about Tracy in the previous videos. Well, as you can tell, him and I are about as close can be. I was born in September 1st of 55, and he was born August 1st of 56. They basically call us Irish twins. And yeah, we did a lot of things together. We were polar opposites in a lot of things. We got each other in trouble a few times and covered a few bases for each other at other times. So hopefully you've enjoyed those stories and more to come. Getting back to the world of work, I'd like to pick up with that after my graduation. I think I closed with the work that I did for Swede and Vera Johnson at the White Star Laundry. Well, after graduation, that summer, basically did some odd jobs. I completed the summer working for Swede and Vera until I left for the Naval Academy Prep School. I received an appointment to the Naval Academy. My dear mother worked very hard to get me into the Naval Academy. I fell short in a couple of areas. I received an appointment to the Academy from Senator John Melcher at the time. And there was a couple of things that I didn't qualify to the Academy for, but they asked if I wouldn't mind going to the Naval Academy Prep School. I'd never heard of that before, so we did a little research, and basically it was like a preparatory school for 1 year, kind of like I want to say a community college type deal, and you transition then into the Naval Academy itself after that year. When I enlisted, I had basically three options back then. I could complete my time at the prep school for 1 year and then move on to the Naval Academy. I could also quit at any time and finish my time in the regular Navy and the reserves. It was basically a 2-year commitment with 4 years of reserves. Or I could get out entirely from the service and be eligible for the draft. When I turned 18, that was one of the last years they had the draft, and they were not taking soldiers over to Vietnam. They were actually pulling them out then. So that's probably the best route that I could have taken, which I did. I was at the Naval Academy for 8 months. It was located in Bainbridge, Maryland, at an old naval training center from World War II. Quite a lot of experiences there. I think when I do a video series on my education, I'll include some stories based on the Naval Academy Prep School, because it was quite an adventure, and another one of those things that, well, you never regret. You learn a lot from the experiences you gained, and you move forward in life. Getting back to work finally here. Once I got out of the Naval Academy Prep School, like I said, I resigned after 8 months. So I had basically some time between, I got out end of March, first part of April. My mother had been working with Montana Tech. They at the time were recruiting Tracy for a football scholarship, but Tracy had already made his decision. He was going to the North Dakota State School of Science in Wahpeton, which he ended up doing and playing football there for 2 years. My mother went ahead and got some tapes of our games and sent them to the head coach at Montana Tech at the time, Bill Sprinkle. Well, I didn't know it, but the defensive coordinator for Bill Sprinkle and the Ore Diggers, Montana Tech Ore Diggers, just happened to be Butte Central's head football coach when we played them for the title in '72, Swede Kinnison. There's some stories there too. But continuing on, once I got out of the Naval Academy, I came back home. I had some time between resigning my commission and coming back home. I ended up getting a job with George Stensland. George had a farm up north, and he had some bottom land. And then they built a brand new house south of Macon. I believe Wayne, I'm going to blow this one. I can't remember his last name. Wayne and Ava live there now, or they did when I left. But anyway, he had a few acres there by the house that they built south of Macon. So the job that I ended up doing was I went up to the North Place, which was located where Christy is now, Christy Stensland. It was at the time lived in by Pat O'Connor and his family. There was Rita and Scott and Casey and what was the daughter's name? She's in Miles City now. There again, bits and pieces come and go. But anyway, I had never been exposed to actually working on the farm as far as running equipment and stuff. I got to ride the combine and some of the grain trucks when we were growing up, but actually operating those myself, too young to. But anyway, I went up to the Stensland place up on the Scobie Road, and Pat hired me out to do different jobs. The first one that I can recall, basically I was to run the D6 or D9 Caterpillar in the corrals and push all of the cow poop away from the interior toward the edge of the corrals. Well, not knowing heavy equipment and never running it before, Pat kind of basically put me in the driver's seat and showed me a few levers and a few pedals and sat with me for a little bit while I was trying to learn the techniques. I did all right when Pat was there, but once he turned me loose and I was on my own, well, got a little bit frightened. That was a big thing for me to do. And I ended up getting the Caterpillar basically digging too much dirt and got it stuck. Went into some areas where there was some moisture and water. So that didn't turn out so good. Well, then I graduated to the next task. I was to take the tractor and a feeder and go out into the pasture and feed the cattle. And of course, there's a gate to get into the pasture. And I'd opened gates before, hunting with my friends Alan Kawasaki and Lenny Vine and a few of the boys out south. But I'd never tried to run farm equipment through a gate. Well, it's kind of like if you see a semi, you got to take a wide turn. Well, I did not take a wide turn. I cut it a little bit short, and out goes the fence post where the gate is. You're kind of getting the picture here. I probably wasn't destined to be a very good ranch hand, but nonetheless, they stuck with me. The next thing that we did that I remember, we moved a ranch house that was located up in Buzzard's Glory on the Danny McLaughlin property. It was a ranch house or a bunkhouse that Leonard Fat Caracqua lived in. He was a hand up there for the McLaughlins, farmed for them and helped them out up there. But it was my first time meeting Russell Slats Lowe. Now that's a name for those of you that are around my age and older would know. Russell Slats Lowe had a moving business. He moved a lot of houses back in the day, and he was hired by George to move this hired hand ranch house from up in Buzzard's Glory down the gravel roads to the Stensland homestead there where Pat and his family lived. And I guess eventually I was supposed to stay there, but it didn't work out that way. But I did get to experience some hard work there. That work by Slats was no easy task. The jacks that he used to jack up the houses were around 100 pounds each, and you had a lot of railroad ties that were cut off to block it. It was quite a little operation to move houses. You slid a piece of equipment up underneath the house that you had jacked up, and then you set it down, and you just gradually hauled it down the road and got where you were going. You had to be careful and not hit any high wires, or kind of keep it in the middle of the road and flag, let people know in front of you and behind you that you were moving this equipment, and to be slow and be careful. So we got the house there eventually. And then the next memory I have was getting on a tractor down by George's place south of Macon. And it was my job to run the tractor with a disc and do some summer fallow in the field there. Well, again, learning on the job, learning how to run a tractor. Like I said, I'd ridden a tractor and some of that equipment before when I was a kid, but doing it yourself and on your own. And I was just 18 at the time, and I know that a lot of the kids that grew up out on the farm would handle that very easily, but for me it was new grounds, and well, I did the best I could, but not very successful. A lot of back and forth in that summer fallow field trying to get the patterns right. Then after that, I went to Butte. It turned out that I earned a partial scholarship at Montana Tech to play football, thanks to my mother and the work that she did to get me there. In going and viewing the school, they were recruiting me into the mining engineering program. And the professor of mining engineering lined me up with a job in the mines in Butte for the rest of the summer. I went there, I think, late May, early June, and started working for the Anaconda Mining Company, the Anaconda Company. And became a underground miner. I got to ride a elevator shaft with miners down about 3,900 feet below the surface. And I'll tell you what, if you had claustrophobia, that wasn't the job for you. But my fears were not so much claustrophobia or, going down where it's awful warm down there. I had a greater fear of heights. So I was able to handle that okay. My job in the mine itself, there was a channel where they ran acidic water through, and they used it to mine the ore out of the hills in the shafts, and they did some sort of backfill or used it with a hydraulic. But anyway, it was my job to haul these 50-pound sacks of phosphate walls to basically kind of take the acid out of the water. And I did that. That was an awful hot job, I can tell you that much. Working 3,900 feet below the surface, it's a little warm the closer you get to the center. I was also at a couple of occasions filled in and did a double shift. The task that I did then was I would ride a ore car further on down the shaft, and we went down to the bottom of the shaft of the Kelly mine, which was either the Kelly or the Mount Con. Those were the two basic mines that I remember going into, for those of you in the Butte area or familiar with that. But anyway, one of my tasks when I was filling in and subbing was to go down and muck out the bottom, because as the iron ore cars were going to the surface, some of the rock would go over the edges and go down to the bottom of the shaft. Well, you had to go down and clean that out every so often, otherwise the elevator would not go all the way to the bottom and get them to where they needed to go. So that was my mining experience. So now I've been a ranch hand and farmer, and I've been a miner. And then I ended up playing football, and still was not a mature young lad. I played football, I did okay. The story about Swede Kennison, Swede and I did not see eye to eye very well. I told him if we'd have played the Butte Central Maroons in the title game anywhere besides Naranchi Stadium, we'd have probably whooped them. Which I knew that wasn't true, because they had a lot more guys going on to college ball than we did. Myself, Dave Stengel, and Tracy, Craig Anderson. There might have been a couple more that ended up going and playing a little bit of college ball, but certainly Butte Central had a whole team full of kids that went on to play ball, and eventually were national champions at Montana State. After I got home, I ended up quitting school there too in March. Seems like spring was not a good time to be a book learner. I went home and ended up getting a job with the city of Wolf Point. And the city of Wolf Point was hiring. Chuck Worley was the city works director, so I got hired on. Arlie Jensen was like the foreman of the crews. I did several jobs there. One of them was I went out to the dump grounds and ended up running the hot mix plant. You made asphalt in the summertime for filling potholes and maybe doing an overlay in different areas. That was another hot task. I got to run a front end loader, which of course after the experience that I had with the Caterpillar and the loader or the front ender on that one, I handled it a little bit better. There was a big pile of gravel that you would dump into this hopper, and then you'd get off the loader and jump on the machine that mixed the oil, and the oil was coming out probably, I want to say 150 degrees. And of course, if it was a hot day outside, that just added to the heat. So you made asphalt. And then trucks would come underneath the dumper, and you would dump either into dump trucks for the local crews that were fixing streets, or there were even some roads that BIA were doing, and I filled their trucks up with asphalt as well. So that was one of the tasks that I did. Another task that I ended up doing, at the time, the garbage trucks were the type, and Jim Krantz was the main guy there. He had a couple workers, Frenchie Goodtrack, Francis Goodtrack, and Martel. First name escapes me. But anyway, Jim Krantz went on vacation, so Frenchie jumped in the truck, and they moved me from work that I was doing, repairing streets and broken lines, broken water lines, picking up trash in the alleys whenever it rained and windstorms came through. You'd pick up limbs, just a whole lot of stuff going on. But anyway, I ended up being on the back of that George Martel. I knew it would come to me. Myself and George ended up being in the back of the truck while Frenchie drove, and we were picking up trash cans in the alleys and dumping them into the dump truck. Because at that time, basically, that's how you did it. There were these 55-gallon drums, or some maybe 35-gallon metal canisters, but you would dump the trash from them into the back of the truck and then kind of compress it. And then once the truck was full, you would take it out to the dump grounds and dump it. So I got to be experienced there as a garbage man for a couple weeks. So there was quite a few diversified tasks with the city. $2.88 is what we worked for by the hour, if you could believe it or not, back then. And then at the time, while I was doing that, Mother was working part-time at the Elks Club, and they had a position open up as a bartender. And Rudy Hebelman was the one that was running the Elks Club at the time. Peggy Barber ran the bar area, and her mother, Monty Piercy, ran the kitchen and the dining room. And that's where Mom was working. I believe that maybe Terry and Tom got jobs there as dishwashers too. So it was kind of a family affair once I went to work there as a bartender. I started doing that, I want to say fall of 75 maybe? Yeah, 75. And so that began my career in the bar business. I worked at the Elks from the fall until, probably March of 76. And Herman and Marlene Shumway at the time bought Dad's Bar from Bob Shumway. Bob used to own it. And anyway, Herman paid me $10 more a shift. So I went to work for him. I was one of his first bartenders. It was Herman, Marlene, and myself that did most of the bartending. Till eventually Glenn Friesen came along, and him and I became the mainstays of Dad's Bar for a few years. That also proved out to be a godsend, learning that trade, because I was in and out of jobs related to the bar business for quite a few years. It actually put bread on the table when I went back to college for my second and third go-arounds. We didn't do so hot at Montana Tech. We eventually went to Eastern Montana College at the time after Dad passed away in '76. He died of a heart attack. So I was working at Dad's bar, and also at the time I was spinning some records at KVCK. Believe it or not, I did a little bit of disc jockey there. Quite an experience there as well. But anyway, later on, after Dad passed away, I had a falling out with Herman, and I ended up just picking up odd jobs, collecting unemployment. I ended up going out south working with Hiram Peters. Hiram was married to one of the Garfield girls. That name will come to me as well here eventually. But anyway, we were out there, and I got into the hay business. I got to do some swathing, and they didn't really trust me on the baler, so basically swathing was the major job that I did out there. That was another farm experience, a little bit better. Got a little more experience as we went, a little older. And I eventually started school at Eastern in Billings back in '77 in January. And at the time, just doing some odd stuff around the town. Ended up getting a job at Friday's Beer Bar, pumping beer and pizzas, and had a little fun doing that too as a college boy. Because I had some experience in the radio, I ended up also at that time assisting a gentleman by the name of Bruce Parker. Bruce was well known in athletics. He was an athletic director for Carroll College, head of the Frontier Conference for a while. He might have went over to Montana State as a assistant athletic director, and then got the job in Rocky Mountain College. He was the head guy there, the head athletic director. But anyway, he at the time was doing the radio station, broadcasting games at Cook Radio, and also had a job at KRBN in Red Lodge. So I traveled with him to KRBN and was his color man for both football and basketball. And then eventually I got to take the role on as a head broadcaster and started broadcasting some of the Red Lodge games on my own. Bruce also picked up the sports show that is now occupied by, believe it or not, Rocky Erickson. It was Northern Broadcasting Systems sports show, and Bruce used to do that before Rocky. So we had a little bit of experience as a sports broadcaster to put a feather in our cap. Continuing on, didn't last long in the school there. Went a couple years. It took me 2 years to whittle down a 2.33 grade average. Partying and doing all the bad stuff. It took me 18 years from the time I graduated until the time I got my diploma. So I'd done a lot of things in between. After I got out of Eastern Montana College in the spring of 1979, I came back home and was tending bar, and I ended up getting a job working on an oil rig. I went to work as a derrick hand for a gentleman by the name of Leonard Nelson. I was working at the time with Larry Thompson. I can't remember who was the derrick hand. He was the motor man. Now there was a couple other guys. It may come to me, it may not. because I did a couple of different rigs. So I worked on the Bomac rig for a while, and then the Bomac rig around Wolf Point got shut down. It didn't have any more holes, but they had a new rig that they were setting up over in North Dakota, over by Belfield. We ended up parking a trailer, a fifth wheel trailer, Club 85, if you've ever been on that road on Highway 85, north out of Belfield up to Williston. There's a bar and a store there called the Club 85. And I got on a crew with Gary Nelson and Robbie Solheim, Greg Rounds, and we picked up a local fellow by the name of Arnie something. He was the motorman, and Robbie and I were deckhands, and then I think Greg was the derrick hand. So I got into the oil business. I've got that in my belt as well. That lasted for, I don't know how long. I ended up probably quitting before winter, because I remember that I had saved up quite a bit of money, and I ended up just heading out of town. Went to see Tracy down in California. Stayed with him for a month or two, and then I went to Arizona, where Terry was. Terry was on a seismograph crew there. He was the one that read the data. He was in what they call the doghouse. And so I probably worked, I want to say, 4 months on just partying. Had a good time visiting the two brothers and spending some time there. And then I came back to Wolf Point, did some more bartending. Like I said, in and out of the business for 15 years. Glenn and I held down the fort. At that time, though, the second time at Dad's Bar, Steve had taken over from Herman and Marlene and was running the bar. And he had resigned his position working for UPS, and just the bar became his life. And so the three of us held the fort down, and for quite a few years. But in the meantime, I ended up getting a bookkeeping job with Larry Good at Northern Montana Electric. He had an electric business that Keith Wolf ended up taking over. Keith was an electrician under Larry Good back in them days. And I was doing the books for Larry and learning about electrical parts and inventories and bookkeeping and all of that. So my world of bookkeeping started there as well. I worked there for a while. Also, Larry had done a lot of subcontract work for Ray Randolph at Randolph Construction. And on several occasions, I would go over and assist Gail, his wife, with the books. So Ray and Gail and their crews ran Randolph Construction for quite a few years in Wolf Point. And I got some more bookkeeping experience there in the construction business. Learned about Davis-Bacon, wages, federal monies, different things like that. And I did that for a while. Went back to the bar until a position opened up on a seismograph crew. And I went seismographing. Went to work as a surveyor's helper with Heather Friesen and myself and Dan Nefsker. Boone Nefsker was his nickname. We did that for a while. We finished the work in Wolf Point, and Heather and myself went with the crew. They were Canadian crew out of Calgary, and we went to Lemon, South Dakota. And Heather and I worked for a surveyor by the name of Franz. And I did that for a little bit, and they transferred me into a position where I ran a vibrator. Back in those days in the seismograph business, you either vibrated the earth or you put dynamite down and did shots so that you could take readings and find out where the oil was. Also jugged a little bit. Those were the guys that stomped the phones into the ground to pick up those sound waves in the oil exploration. What did we do after that? We lasted there until that job went. Went back to Wolf Point and was tending bar. And a job in the oil field, seismograph work again, came open in Glasgow. We went to work for a crew over in Glasgow. Dead of winter, not so conducive to working outside. The crew that we hooked up with had a lot of guys that would rather ride in the cab and put us in the back, and we got a little bit cold back there. We lasted there a couple of weeks, and we ended up, those of us that were from Wolf Point that went on the crew, we ended up getting wind that they needed some help down in Texas. Well, it was a lot warmer in Texas, so we ended up going to Texas. That would have been Bobby Bauer, Jeff Neubauer, Chad Martins, a few of those fellas. But I went down to Texas, and I ended up connecting with my brother Tom, who was a surveyor on a crew down there. And I was a survey helper with him. And we did that for a while as well, until that work went away. And then I came back to Wolf Point, was tending bar. And Mom decided that she was going to get into the bar business and bought Arlo's. So I ran Arlo's for a number of years, from about the summer of '73 to, I want to say 77? No, it wouldn't have been 77. No, it would have been 83. Yeah, it would have been 83. 83 to 87. And then in 88, I went back to school in Billings. By that time, I was married with 2 kids. I'd also done some assistant coaching with Terry Thomas, and I got into the coaching business while I was running the bar. I ran Arlo's for those 4 years. So I got into that aspect of the bar business, the management part, and I'd already done a lot of bartending. But part of the deal there was that we bought the business at the wrong time. In business, a lot of it has to do with timing. And we didn't have very good timing and luck. We got in on the end of the oil boom in Wolf Point. And so we lasted in that business for about, a little over 4 years. And I went back to school. And in school, with the family, I once again found a job while I was going to school at Fridays. No, it wasn't Friday. It was the 17 Club. That was my stretch at the 17 Club in Billings. And I worked there for almost 2 years, being a student and part-time bartender. That put bread on the table. That was quite an experience there. Another thing that I wouldn't trade for the world. I worked with Harold and Renee Stewart, working for Tom and Vi Morrow. Good people. And eventually I did my student teaching in Wolf Point. So after I did all my schooling, I moved back to Wolf Point, did my student teaching, and I did that in a fall semester. And after the fall semester, I didn't have a job, so the school hired me as a special ed aide. So I worked the second semester as a special ed aide. And after that, I got hired as a teacher in Wolf Point, and thus began my teaching degree. And that was basically all of the jobs that I'd had, and I was in education for 30 years. And quite an experience. Now, further on down the road, I'm going to talk a little bit about that, about my years in education, about my years in teaching. Again, if there's anything that you want to talk about, or a topic that you might want me to share with you, those of you that know me, if you want to know more about it, give me a shout out in the comment section in any one of those platforms that I told you. That was TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And with that, we'll end the work session. And this is Cody signing out.